It has been leaked by ESPN's Brian Windhorst that the Lakers have a trade deal lined up for a guard. It is reported that this guard only has one more year left on his contract, so this will be a deal that would allow the Lakers to maintain flexibility for next offseason, where they are rumored to be going after Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, let's go over which players may be the guy that fits the profile who is lined up for the Lakers in a trade, and they all range from maybe to very likely. And very quickly before we get into it, if you want to see more interesting NBA content just like this, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, as I really do appreciate all your guys' support. So first up, I have Victor Oladipo. The Lakers can potentially get that third star next to LeBron and Davis for pretty cheap, and obviously we know Oladipo wasn't himself last year after returning from his injury, but I think he does have a good chance to bounce back. This will be somewhat of a risk for the Lakers, but if Oladipo does in fact get back to his old form, he would be a tremendous complementary scorer and lockdown perimeter defender next to LeBron and AD. I think a lot of people forget this is a guy who can drop 25 points on any given night while being able to playmake for others as well, and he would be an amazing guard to put on guys like Lillard and Curry in the Western Conference as well. If he gets back to near his old form, I could see him averaging about 18 to 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and about 2 steals per game on solid efficiency, and this would almost guarantee, as I said before in my other videos, that the Lakers will be back-to-back champions, assuming everything else stays the same and the team is healthy. He's a two-way player that would give the Lakers a potential building block for their future next to Davis, and this may be a great buy low option for the Lakers in my opinion, as they would only likely have to give up something like Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, and maybe a first round pick, and they would likely be able to maintain most of the rest of their team. Next up, I have Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think this is a pretty likely option, I guess, as the Thunder are looking to rebuild and Schroeder is probably not a big part of their long-term future. He was great with OKC off the bench last season, averaging 18.9 points and 4 assists while shooting 38.5% from 3. He's developed into a good 3-point shooter and a guy who can get to the rim with ease, and he would be a super 6-man for LA. He would take a lot of pressure off of LeBron on the playmaking department as well, with his averages of 4.6 assists per game throughout his career. A trade of Green and Kuzma for Schroeder and a second round pick could work, as the Lakers will be getting a very good win-now player and a small pick, while the Thunder will be getting the main young player in this deal in Kyle Kuzma. Now moving on, I have Tim Hardaway Jr. of the Dallas Mavericks. I could see him picking up his player option and then he would be expendable for the Mavs, given the rise of Seth Curry. If Hardaway Jr. is on the trade market, he will be a solid player for the Lakers to get for pretty cheap. He can score in a pinch and create his own shot, and his 3-point shooting will definitely help spread the floor for LeBron and Davis. Also, his defense is actually not as bad as many people think, and I think he could be very effective as either a starter or coming off the bench. A Green and filler trade for Hardaway would be pretty fair in my opinion, as the Lakers would be trading a little bit of defense for some much better offense. Now we'll move on to Evan Fournier of the Orlando Magic. He's one of the most underrated players on this list, and I think it's possible this would be a curveball that would actually be a great fit. He's a very good scorer who can shoot from outside but also get to the rim, and he would be that consistent 15 to 20 point per game scorer that the Lakers need behind LeBron and Davis. He could help spread the floor with his 39.9% 3-point shooting from last season, but he's also a solid secondary playmaker as well for a 2-guard. He would be a great get for the Lakers if they can trade something like Danny Green, Quinn Cook, and their 2020 first round pick, and I think people are seriously forgetting just how good this guy could be for a much better team. Now moving on to probably the most likely option on this list and the player I think the Lakers are targeting, and that's Derrick Rose. The Lakers will be getting a dynamic playmaker and scorer off the bench in D Rose, as he's been amazing over the past few seasons as a 6-man. He's really made a great comeback after a slew of injuries as he's become a solid 3-point shooter, and this helped open up driving lanes for himself and his teammates. I would love to see Rose reunite with LeBron after they played together in Cleveland, and I think he could be a big part of a Lakers back-to-back title. The Pistons would do this to continue their rebuild and get a nice young player in Kuzma, and we'll see how Kuzma will fare as a top option on the team. As I said in my other videos, I've talked about this before, I like this deal for both sides, and I think there is a very solid chance of this happening. Now moving on to a very unlikely option, but one just to throw out there, I have Mike Conley of the Utah Jazz. This one is probably the most unlikely on this list, but I do want to point out it is certainly a possibility. He could be had for very cheap given his relatively mediocre play and fit with the Jazz, and I think he could bounce back with the Lakers next season. He would be great as a perimeter defender who can run the offense next to LeBron or also with the bench and stagger minutes, and he showed flashes of his old Grizzlies self in the playoffs this past season. It would be hard to make contracts work as the Lakers would have to give up a lot of players, so that's why I didn't have this as a very likely option. But if Conley can get past his injuries, I think he would be a great fit with the Lakers as that third guy next to LeBron and Davis for next year. Also, his big contract will be coming off the book after this season as well, so it would still leave some cap flexibility for next offseason as well. Now for another unlikely but underrated option, I have JJ Redick of the New Orleans Pelicans. I threw this in for fun, as while this is probably the second unlikeliest trade behind the Conley move, I think he'll be a great fit with the Lakers. A Green for Redick swap can definitely work, and I think he would be a great fit next to LeBron and Davis as an off-ball shooter, and he could shoot lights out by getting open looks off of LeBron's passes and when teams double team LeBron or Davis. I think his fit will be nuts with the Lakers, and I think he'll be sure to knock down over 40% of the wide open threes he would get instead of Danny Green's bricks. However, Redick is definitely somewhat of a poor defender, but the Lakers can try to hide this through smart defensive schemes. Overall, I would love to see Redick with the Lakers, and he's an underrated option that could be had for very few assets as well. And for the final player on this list, I have Alfred Payton. I think people forget that Payton is actually a very solid backup point guard, and he would be great if Rondo does in fact leave to somewhere like the Clippers this offseason. He's a terrific playmaker who is a nightly triple-double threat, and his defense is also very good as well. The main problem with his game since he entered the NBA is his three-point shooting, but I think if he can finally work on that to even just around a little less than league average at around 33 to 34% consistently, he would be a terrific replacement for Rajon. A trade of the Knicks accepting Payton's team option and then sending him to the Lakers for something like McGee if JaVale agrees to his player option, and then Quinn Cook could be a fair deal for both sides and a cheap option for LA to consider, especially if all their other options go awry. So that's a wrap. Thank you guys all for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video and want to see more daily NBA content just like this, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and also be sure to turn on post notifications so you can stay updated on when my newest video will be coming out. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram and hit me up if you want to talk about basketball or business. Just drop a comment down below on my photo or DM me, and I'll definitely try to get back to most of you guys there. Drop a comment down below on which guard you think the Lakers are targeting in a trade deal that has been leaked. Let me know as I do all comments. I'm definitely interested to see what you guys have to say here as well, especially if it's not a player on this list. So, without that being said, once again, thank you guys all for watching, and hopefully, I will see you in your next video. Peace.